do not notice the drift at first. It happens quietly, like background music in a restaurant, always there, never questioned. What you hear every day starts to shape what you feel, and what you feel begins to sculpt what you believe. Long before the body walks away from God, the heart starts humming a different tune. It is never rebellion at full volume. It begins as rhythm without reflection, melody without meaning, pleasure without purpose. The enemy does not need to silence your prayers. He only needs to drown them beneath noise that feels harmless. Music was born in heaven. It was not created for entertainment, but for alignment. Every note was once a ladder for the soul to climb toward light. But when the song forgets its source, it becomes a spell. It does not need dark lyrics to darken the listener. It only needs to teach you indifference, to make holiness sound boring and chaos sound beautiful. The first war in heaven began with a musician who wanted applause. And ever since then, the most subtle warfare has not been fought with swords, but with songs. The first song that distances you from God is the song of self-glory. It hides behind phrases like, follow your heart, and you don't need anyone. It sounds empowering, but listen carefully. Its rhythm beats to the drum of pride. It teaches you to replace reverence with relevance, humility with self-idolatry. Pride does not always shout. Sometimes it sings softly about independence until worship feels unnecessary. The melody is addictive because it praises you. It tells you that your feelings are final, that your desires define truth. But truth does not bow to emotion. Emotion bows to truth. The soul that sings only of itself eventually forgets the key of gratitude. The second song is the song of numbness, the music of distraction. It fills the air with noise so that silence cannot speak. It turns every moment into background music, making you uncomfortable with stillness. The enemy loves this rhythm because silence is where the soul meets God, and if he can make silence unbearable, he can make presence impossible. You start needing noise to feel alive, volume to feel emotion, rhythm to feel purpose. Yet in the quiet, God still whispers. If you can no longer hear him, it is not because he stopped speaking, it is because you stopped pausing. The third song is the song of rebellion. It dresses itself as freedom. It calls authority oppression and obedience weakness. It celebrates impulse as authenticity. Its lyrics praise the breaking of boundaries, but boundaries were never cages, they were maps. The melody of rebellion flatters you into thinking that sin is self-expression, that restraint is repression, that holiness is outdated. But every song that glorifies chaos becomes the anthem of emptiness. Freedom without wisdom is fire, without oxygen it burns bright, then suffocates. The fourth song is the song of despair. It sounds beautiful, almost sacred, because it mirrors your pain. It tells you that darkness is honest and hope is naive. It teaches you to romanticize sadness, to build identity around heartbreak. The world calls this art. Heaven calls it amnesia. You were not created to worship despair. Sorrow can be a doorway to God when it is surrendered, but when you glorify it, you make an idol of your wound. The enemy does not fear your suffering, he fears your surrender. Because surrender turns pain into prayer, but despair turns pain into pride. The fifth song is the song of lust disguised as love. It sings sweetly about connection, but only teaches consumption. It replaces covenant with chemistry, devotion with dopamine. The rhythm is seductive, but the result is emptiness. It trains you to confuse desire for destiny. It tells you that passion is purpose, that pleasure is power, that boundaries are burdens. Yet love without holiness cannot last. It collapses under the weight of its own hunger. The more you feed it, the more it starves you. True love is not appetite, it is alignment. And the sixth song is the song of mockery, the one that turns reverence into irony. It makes purity seem naive, faith seem foolish, conviction seem comical. It hides its poison inside humor so that you laugh while drifting from light. Mockery is the music of apathy. It trains the heart to stop caring. You cannot worship what you constantly ridicule. The enemy knows that ridicule kills faster than hatred because hatred still takes something seriously. Once you can laugh at sin, you no longer fear it. These 6 songs play everywhere through speakers, screens, conversations, habits. They weave through the culture like a background score. And the tragedy is not that they exist, but that believers no longer recognize them. Discernment has been traded for tolerance. We say, it's just music, forgetting that music was never just anything. Every sound shapes atmosphere. Every lyric plants seed. You become what you repeat. Guard your ears like you guard your heart. The gate of hearing is the gate of feeling, and feeling shapes believing. What you allow to entertain you begins to educate you. You start to think in the rhythm you consume. It is not censorship, it is stewardship. You were given the gift of attention so that you could aim it toward meaning. To waste it on noise is to bankrupt the soul. But this is not a call to silence. It is a call to sacred sound. God never asked you to stop singing. He asked you to change the song. There is music that heals because it harmonizes with heaven. There are melodies that restore memory, rhythms that remind the soul it was made for eternity. You know that feeling when a song makes you weep without understanding why? That is eternity calling you home. Music was meant to awaken, not to anesthetize. When you find those songs, those pure, life-giving melodies, fill your space with them. They do not have to be hymns. They have to be honest. Any song that stirs gratitude is holy ground. Any lyric that invites light is prayer in disguise. Worship is not genre, it is direction. The world will give you noise to numb you, but heaven will give you harmony to heal you. Be careful with what your soul hums when you're not listening. The melody that repeats in your mind becomes the map of your mood. If you wake with anxiety, trace the soundtrack of your yesterday. The Spirit speaks in resonance. Change your sound, and you will change your sight. Fill your mornings with gratitude, your afternoons with wisdom, your nights with peace. Make your playlist a prayer list. You were created for divine rhythm. Your heartbeat itself is percussion from heaven, proof that music was written into your design. The devil has no instrument except distortion. He cannot create. He can only corrupt. He takes what was meant for worship and turns it into distraction. But once you remember your original song, you will recognize his counterfeit immediately. So learn again how to listen, not to lyrics first, but to atmosphere. Ask yourself after every song, do I feel closer to light or farther from it? Do I feel expansion or erosion, hope or heaviness? Your body will always tell you the truth. Peace has a texture. So does poison. One makes you breathe deeper. The other makes you shrink. And if you want to be truly rich in spirit, in purpose, in joy, choose the soundtrack of your soul wisely. Because prosperity begins in peace. Success without sanctity is noise that never stops. The richest life is one that sounds like gratitude, moves like grace, and ends in harmony with heaven. Be careful what you call harmless. Not everything that entertains you loves you. Some songs carry weight you can't see. Some choruses teach surrender to shadows. The serpent does not always hiss. Sometimes he hums. But the one who walks in awareness cannot be deceived. When you live tuned to truth, every lie sounds off-key. And then your life itself becomes music. Your words form melody. Your actions form rhythm. Your love forms harmony. You become the song that leads others back to light. That is worship, the sound of a soul that remembers its source. So listen carefully, live intentionally, and let your heart become the instrument of heaven once more. And the danger of these 6 songs is that they do not shout. They whisper. They use charm instead of chains. They do not ask you to betray God outright. They only ask you to hum along. They do not curse holiness. They make it sound irrelevant. They change your heart the way rust changes iron, slowly, invisibly, until what once was strong can no longer hold its shape. You hear them in cars, in cafes, in earbuds pressed close to the mind, and you tell yourself it is nothing. But nothing repeated often enough becomes something. Every repetition teaches the soul what to love. The song of self-glory is the most seductive because it sounds like victory. It promises empowerment, but delivers isolation. It tells you that you are enough, that you owe no one, that your own voice is the only gospel, but the voice that never bows can never be blessed. Pride convinces you that worship is weakness, yet even angels bow. The wise do not kneel because they are small. They kneel because they recognize greatness. Every time you forget to thank, you begin to think you created yourself, and that illusion is the first distance from the divine. Then there is the song of numbness, the melody of distraction that fills your every waking hour. It tells you that silence is awkward, that stillness is outdated, that rest is laziness. You begin to fear quiet, because in the quiet, truth speaks. The enemy does not need to tempt you with sin if he can simply keep you busy. You scroll, you tap, you hum, you move, and in all the movement, meaning slips away. Yet God speaks in frequencies too gentle for noise. To hear him, you must detox from sound. The song of rebellion sings loudest in youth, but its echo haunts every generation. It tells you that rules are prisons and that faith is a cage. But rebellion never creates. It only tears down. It promises identity but breeds emptiness. You think you are escaping control, but you are only changing masters. The defiance that rejects truth must bow to chaos eventually. Even storms obey laws. Freedom without direction collapses into despair, because purpose is the only rhythm that can sustain joy. Then comes the song of despair, the most deceptive melody of all. It wears honesty like a mask. It tells you that to be deep is to be dark, that to feel deeply is to bleed forever. It confuses vulnerability with hopelessness. But sorrow was meant to be passage, not prison. When pain becomes identity, healing feels like betrayal. The heart that worships its wound cannot feel wonder. There is art in pain, yes, but there is greater art in resurrection. Even broken instruments can play beautiful music when placed back in divine hands. The song of lust, disguised as love, is the anthem of this age. It fills stadiums, playlists, hearts. It tells you that you are not complete until you are consumed. It calls obsession, romance, exploitation, freedom, desire, destiny. But lust is hunger without gratitude. It devours the very thing it claims to adore. True love gives, false love takes. True love sanctifies, false love stains. The more the world worships pleasure, the less it remembers peace. The body without reverence becomes a temple without a light, and the song of mockery soft laughter with a razor edge. It teaches you to smirk at holiness, to shrug at miracles, to roll your eyes at anything sacred. It claims to be humor, but its real target is humility. When the sacred becomes punchline, conviction becomes cringe, and once you cannot take truth seriously, falsehood has already won. The enemy's greatest masterpiece is not hatred of God, but indifference toward him. Because hatred still acknowledges presence, but indifference erases memory. What do these 6 songs share? Forgetfulness. They all make you forget who you are and whose breath moves inside you. They drown out the original song, the one that was sung over you when you were created. That melody was not about pride or lust or despair. It was harmony between heaven and humanity. Every heartbeat was meant to echo it. The world's noise is an attempt to rewrite it. To return to God is to remember your original sound. It begins with small choices: the silence before words, the gratitude before meals, the thought before reaction. You start to curate your environment not out of fear, but out of reverence. You begin to choose songs that expand you instead of shrink you, stories that build faith instead of mock it, voices that elevate instead of echo emptiness. Discernment becomes devotion. Soon, you start hearing music differently. You no longer ask, is this good or bad? But, what does this make me become? You realize that every song is a sermon. Some preach surrender, some preach self. The rhythm teaches the soul how to move. And if you move long enough to the wrong rhythm, even your prayers start sounding offbeat. But awareness is redemption. The moment you notice, you begin to tune again. Music is spiritual gravity. It pulls you toward the source it serves. When a song carries humility, you feel lifted. When it carries pride, you feel heavy. The body knows before the mind does. The chills you feel at holiness are not coincidence, they are memory. The unease you feel at corruption is not judgment, it is warning. God built discernment into your skin. Trust it. There will come a day when the songs of this world grow louder, where vulgarity will parade as freedom and purity will be mocked as naivety. But do not be afraid. Light has its own frequency. It only takes one candle to expose 1,000 shadows. Every time you choose harmony over hype, silence over noise, gratitude over pride, you tune your soul back to heaven's key, and then you realize the truth. You are an instrument. Your thoughts are strings, your words are chords, your actions are rhythm. The question is not whether you are making music, but what kind. Every decision plays a note. Every day adds to the song. When you speak kindness, you play heaven's melody. When you choose bitterness, you drop into discord. The entire universe is a symphony of choices. So what will you sound like when eternity listens? Will heaven recognize your song? Will the angels say, we heard this rhythm before it belongs to home? Or will they tilt their heads, unable to find the key, wondering when you started playing someone else's tune? This is why awareness matters. Because one life in tune with God can rescore the entire world around it. One person aligned with peace can change the frequency of a family. One home filled with gratitude can silence 1,000 storms. Sound is contagious, so is holiness. Do not underestimate the quiet power of a pure heart. It does not need volume to vibrate eternity. It only needs truth. And truth, once heard, never unsings itself. And so, the journey back to harmony begins in silence. It does not start with shouting verses or with noise of devotion. It begins when you stop running from quiet. Silence is the womb of sound. In silence, you hear what has been buried beneath the noise, the low hum of conscience, the steady rhythm of breath, the pulse of existence reminding you that you were never abandoned. God still speaks, but he speaks in stillness. You do not need new words from heaven. You need new willingness to listen. The songs that distance you from him thrive in constant distraction. But the moment you stand still, their spell weakens. You start to notice how each melody you once loved carried an emotion that stayed with you long after it ended. The self-glory song left you restless, hungry for validation. The numbness song left you hollow, searching for noise. The rebellion song made you tired of fighting everyone, even yourself. The despair song soaked your days in gray. The lust song scattered your focus. The mockery song made cynicism feel like wisdom. Each one had promised a feeling, and each had left you emptier. But awareness is light. The minute you see the pattern breaks. Now, as you turn off the noise, the air itself changes. The atmosphere that once echoed chaos begins to breathe again. At first it feels uncomfortable. Silence always does. It exposes what you have been avoiding. The mind jumps, the body twitches, the past shouts. But if you stay long enough, the anxiety fades and another sound rises. It is softer, but stronger. It is the sound of life remembering itself. You realize that peace is not absence of sound, it is presence of meaning. You do not need to escape the world to find God. You only need to tune the world back to Him. So you start small. You choose songs that lift rather than lower, that remind rather than numb. You begin your mornings with melody that opens your heart instead of hardening it. You play music that makes you want to forgive, to breathe, to create. Soon you see that music was never about entertainment. It was always about alignment. Every sound either strengthens or steals your focus. When you choose sound intentionally, your entire mood begins to obey your purpose. You become aware that sound itself is sacred architecture. The universe was built by voice. Words created worlds. When you speak, you echo that creative power. When you sing, you shape the unseen. The enemy understands this. That is why he tries to corrupt sound. He does not care what genre you love. He only cares that it keeps you unconscious. But when your music becomes mindful, your environment becomes ministry. The same songs that once drained you now teach you to discern. Your taste begins to change. You no longer crave volume. You crave vibration. You no longer chase rhythm. You seek resonance. You are not looking for hits. You are listening for healing. You start hearing the difference between talent and anointing, between performance and presence. Some voices impress you, but others transform you. Some chords sound perfect, but others carry power. You learn that art without spirit is noise, and spirit without truth is deception. Real music carries both beauty that glorifies, truth that sanctifies. Then you begin to sing again, not to perform, but to pray. You hum under your breath as you work, as you drive, as you wake. The melody is simple but sincere. It fills the space around you until the air feels lighter. This is how worship returns. Not in grand gestures, but in small habits of gratitude. You realize that worship is not an event on Sunday. It is the soundtrack of awareness. The world will still sing its counterfeit songs, but your spirit now knows the difference. What used to seduce you now sounds strange, out of key with your peace. People start to notice. They ask why you seem calmer, why your presence feels lighter. They don't understand that it's not a new routine, it's a new resonance. You are no longer tuned to anxiety. You vibrate at gratitude. You are no longer chasing energy. You are channeling it. Every word you speak carries harmony instead of hurry. Every room you enter feels steadier. This is what happens when the soul stops imitating noise and starts embodying music. And as you live in that frequency, you rediscover joy. Joy that is not shallow happiness, but steady radiance. Joy that does not depend on circumstances because it is sourced in connection. You realize joy is not emotion, it is evidence. It proves that you are aligned again. The world can only imitate this glow. It cannot generate it. The devil's rhythm can imitate excitement, but not joy. Excitement fades when the lights turn off. Joy grows even in darkness. Still, the old songs will try to return. Memory is a stubborn DJ. You will hear them in stores, in cars, in conversations. They will tempt you with nostalgia, with the comfort of the familiar. But now you are different. The same lyrics that once controlled you now sound hollow. You hear what they really are, longing, pretending to be liberation. You no longer need to demonize them, you simply outgrow them. Light doesn't argue with shadow, it replaces it. Gradually you begin to apply this principle beyond music. You see that every influence works the same way. What you watch, what you read, what you repeat, all of it sings. Words have frequencies, environments have tones, relationships have keys. Some lift, some lower. Discernment is simply learning to listen. You stop labeling things good or bad. You start asking, Does this lead me closer to God or closer to noise? That single question becomes the compass of your peace. With that awareness, your life becomes composition. You design your days like a song, each morning a prelude, each act of kindness a verse, each obstacle a bridge, each night a chorus of gratitude. Even pain becomes part of the melody. You understand now that dissonance is not evil. It is tension resolving toward harmony. The heart that trusts learns to hear beauty even in the minor keys. You stop begging for perfection. You start listening for purpose. When you reach that place, you know wealth not in coins but in consciousness. You think clearly, love deeply, rest easily. You no longer chase success. Success finds you because peace is magnetic. You no longer chase people. Connection flows naturally because harmony attracts harmony. Your work becomes worship, your home becomes temple, your breath becomes prayer. The world still plays its 6 songs, but you have chosen the 7th, the song of remembrance. That 7th song is silence filled with presence. It does not play through speakers, it plays through souls. It is not written by artists, it is written by awareness. It cannot be bought, streamed, or stolen. It is the frequency of gratitude, the melody of mercy, the harmony of holiness. It is the song that existed before sound, the one that will continue when the last note of the world fades away. When you live in that song, you are never alone. Even in chaos, you hear calm. Even in pain, you sense purpose. Even in endings, you feel eternity beginning again. You realize now that salvation is not escape, it is alignment. Heaven is not a distant place, it is a perfect pitch. The closer your soul resonates with love, the closer you are to home. Every act of forgiveness, every moment of compassion, every breath of gratitude tunes you back to that divine frequency. The world might still sing its noise, but you will stand in peace like a tuning fork of light, vibrating truth through everything you touch. That is how you live rich, how you change yourself, how you become better each day, not by adding more noise, but by mastering your inner music. Because when your inner song is pure, the outer world begins to dance in rhythm with grace. And once you begin living in harmony with that divine rhythm, the world that once overwhelmed you starts to move at your pace. The noise loses its power, not because it stopped, but because you stopped agreeing with it. You now understand that peace is not the absence of sound, but the mastery of resonance. You can stand in the middle of chaos and remain still, because your spirit has learned to hum to heaven's pitch. That stillness is your new wealth, your new strength, your new authority. It's here that true transformation begins. The heart no longer chases affirmation, it generates it. The mind no longer begs for distraction, it hungers for depth. Every breath becomes a note in a larger song, and that song is your life tuned to meaning. You are no longer at war with the world, because you see the world for what it is, a mirror of frequencies, each soul vibrating according to its belief. And now that your belief has changed, your reflection has too. But even now you will be tested. The world will tempt you to forget the song. It will hand you the old playlist of your past and tell you, just one more time. Nostalgia is one of darkness's softest weapons. It doesn't ask you to rebel. It just asks you to remember without renewing. It lures you with memories that were never as sweet as you recall. But you will know the trick now, because every false song leaves an aftertaste of emptiness. The moment you feel that heaviness, you will remember, this tune doesn't fit my peace anymore. So you keep walking, singing the new song under your breath, gratitude in your heart, clarity in your step. The world hears nothing, but heaven hears everything. Angels mark each moment you choose silence over sarcasm, faith over fear, discipline over drift. The kingdom's currency is awareness, and you are becoming wealthy in it. Awareness changes everything. It sharpens your senses. You begin to see beauty where others see routine, to find purpose where others find boredom. The smallest acts become sacraments. Washing a dish becomes worship. Finishing your work with excellence becomes devotion. Listening without interruption becomes prayer. You start realizing that holiness was never supposed to be dramatic. It was always supposed to be deliberate. Every time you honor what you touch, the atmosphere shifts. Energy moves. Grace multiplies. The very air becomes lighter. You are not imagining it. Creation responds to consciousness. The same God who formed galaxies also listens when you choose gratitude over complaint. Each time you bless the ordinary, you participate in his restoration of all things. And slowly, the 6 old songs begin to lose their market. The song of self-glory loses to humility, because humility is harmony with truth. The song of numbness loses to stillness, because stillness carries presence. The song of rebellion loses to surrender, because surrender unlocks peace. The song of despair loses to gratitude, because gratitude turns pain into power. The song of lust loses to love, because love heals what lust consumes. And the song of mockery loses to wonder, because wonder makes cynicism irrelevant. You begin to realize that every sin was simply a detuned virtue, every temptation a corrupted frequency. Pride is distorted confidence. Lust is distorted longing. Despair is distorted depth. Mockery is distorted intelligence. The cure for sin, therefore, is not suppression, it is retuning. Bring everything back to its original pitch, and even your wounds start to worship. That is redemption, not erasure, but restoration. God does not delete the notes that went wrong. He resolves them. He turns your past into harmony with your present, your mistakes into melody for someone else's healing. What once embarrassed you becomes the verse that sets others free. You stop hating your history because you finally hear its hidden rhythm. Every heartbreak was teaching your heart to beat in time with mercy. You see now that wealth was never in possessions, but in perception. The rich are not those who own the most, but those who hear the music of meaning in everything. Poverty is tone deafness to grace. You can be surrounded by miracles and miss them if you're not listening. But the moment your ears open, abundance floods in not as things, but as awareness. You start noticing divine provision everywhere, in timing, in conversation, in the way life rearranges itself to meet your surrender. And as you walk this new path, joy deepens into authority. You are no longer tossed by moods or headlines, because your peace does not depend on circumstance. It depends on harmony. The enemy cannot manipulate a soul that no longer reacts to noise. You have become the conductor now. You decide which sounds enter your symphony. You decide what energy your heart will echo. The world calls this control. Heaven calls it stewardship. You are now managing frequency, not fighting it. You understand that what you focus on expands, and what you bless multiplies. So you bless often. You bless the road, the meal, the friend, the stranger. You bless even the silence between thoughts. Each blessing adds another layer to your inner harmony, until you are surrounded by resonance too strong for despair to penetrate. From this place of awareness, creativity awakens. New ideas come, not from panic, but from peace. Opportunities arrive, not by force, but by flow. You begin to prosper naturally, because prosperity follows clarity. You find yourself achieving more by doing less, speaking less, but meaning more. Your words carry weight now, because they come from alignment, not anxiety. And when people ask your secret, you will tell them the truth in the simplest way. I changed my music. They will laugh, thinking you mean playlists. But you will know the deeper meaning. You changed what you allowed to play in your mind, what you repeated in your speech, what you entertained in your imagination. You tuned yourself to grace, that is all. And grace, once received, becomes melody. It cannot stay silent. You start to live like an instrument again. Your laughter becomes rhythm. Your presence becomes harmony. Your service becomes song. Every time you love someone well, heaven hears another verse added to the eternal symphony. Then one day, in a quiet moment, you realize something beautiful. The same voice that created galaxies is now humming through you. The breath of God that spoke stars into existence now sings through your compassion, your patience, your peace. You are no longer just listening to the divine song, you have become part of it. This is the great reversal. The 6 songs that once distanced you have become reminders to stay tuned. Pride reminds you to thank. Distraction reminds you to pause. Rebellion reminds you to surrender. Despair reminds you to hope. Lust reminds you to love. Mockery reminds you to wonder. Even the enemy's noise becomes background for God's melody. That is mastery, to hear dissonance and still remain in key. When you reach that state, fear has no claim. Fear depends on noise. But silence filled with God is undefeatable. The devil can roar, but he cannot harmonize. You, however, can. You can sing in storms, hum in heartbreaks, praise in pain. You can worship not because life is perfect, but because presence is constant. And in that constancy, you discover eternal rhythm, the rhythm of faith that never ends, that plays even when your ears cannot hear it anymore. The song of heaven keeps going, and when your time on earth concludes, you simply shift keys. You do not die. You change octaves. The music continues, deeper, wider, higher. Eternity is not a new concert. It is the same song without end. And when you finally reach that clarity, the world will not grow quieter, but you will. You will walk through noise like a lighthouse cutting through fog. People will still argue, still chase, still sing the old 6 songs, but they will no longer reach you the same way. Their frequencies will pass around you, not through you. You will move as if wrapped in invisible harmony, protected not by walls, but by awareness. You will hear gossip and choose grace. You will hear despair and offer hope. You will hear rebellion and respond with rest. You will hear lust and counter it with love that dignifies. You will hear mockery and answer it with wonder. You will hear pride and replace it with praise. The entire battlefield will change because the music inside you has changed. There will be moments when you forget. Everyone forgets. There will be days when the old rhythms call you back, when you crave validation again, when you fill the silence with scrolling, when you sing the anthem of self-pity without realizing it. But each time you drift, you will return faster. Repentance will no longer feel like punishment. It will feel like tuning. You will stop judging yourself for being human and start rejoicing that grace still works. The strings of a guitar stretch and slip, yet the musician never throws it away. He tunes it again. God does the same with you. Slowly you begin to realize that everything has music in it. The sunrise hums. The laughter of children is percussion. The heartbeat of those you love keeps time. Even the wind against your window is harmony, reminding you that the world is alive. You stop seeing life as random events and start hearing it as composition. Every joy is a major key, every sorrow a minor one. Together they form a symphony of redemption. And then you understand that wealth was never about accumulation. It was about attunement. A rich man with a noisy soul is still poor, but a humble soul in harmony with God owns peace that cannot be bought. You learn to measure abundance, not by what you hold, but by what you hear. The quiet joy that visits you at dawn, the calm that follows obedience, the satisfaction of purpose, these are heaven's currency. The world will still try to sell you its music. It will disguise chaos as culture, noise as normal, rebellion as freedom. But you will smile, because you now recognize the counterfeits. You have heard the real thing. The truth has a timbre that lies cannot imitate. You will not need to condemn anyone or hide from anything. You will simply stay faithful to your frequency. Truth defends itself when it is lived. The more you live in that truth, the more creation responds. Doors open with ease. Words come with wisdom. People you once strained to reach now come to you, drawn by the peace you carry. You do not need to prove anything anymore. You only need to stay in tune. The same God who orchestrates galaxies will handle timing. Your job is harmony. His is harvest. You begin to pray differently, not for miracles to change your circumstances, but for melody to change your perception. You stop asking for escape and start asking for endurance. You stop asking for control and start asking for clarity. And in that clarity, you discover how divine power works. It does not shout, it sings. It does not force, it flows. It does not demand, it draws. Every day becomes another verse of your testimony. The morning you choose gratitude instead of complaint, a new chorus begins. The afternoon you forgive someone who never apologized, the rhythm deepens. The evening you rest instead of worrying, the melody resolves. Your life starts to sound like redemption in motion. People around you begin to feel lighter because you have become a living hymn. And then the ultimate realization dawns. God was never asking for perfection. He was asking for participation. The universe is already singing. He only wanted you to join the song. All along, you thought holiness was separation, but now you see it is synchronization. Heaven's music is not for angels alone. It was written for every willing soul. You were created to resonate with it, to be part of it, to echo eternity through time. When that truth lands, gratitude explodes inside you. You weep, not out of sadness, but because beauty has become unbearable in the best way. You remember every moment you thought was wasted, and see how it fits into the rhythm now. Every failure became tension that resolved into grace. Every heartbreak became percussion that drove the melody forward. Nothing was lost. It was all composition. You stand there, breathing slowly, aware of the miracle that you are still here, still capable of harmony, still invited to sing. The 6 false songs fade like static behind you. The only rhythm that remains is the one that says, "Be still and know that I am God." And you know it not as concept, but as cadence. It is the pulse of your own heart, the whisper behind every breath. This is what it means to live close to God, not to escape the world, but to sound different within it, to let your life hum with quiet conviction while others chase noise, to keep your peace tuned even when chaos plays loud, to become so full of light that darkness cannot find its echo in you. When that happens, you will see miracles in ordinary moments. The conversation that heals, the stranger who smiles, the small provision that arrives just when you need it. All of it is music responding to faith. You will know then that heaven has never been silent. You were simply learning to listen. And someday, when you close your eyes for the last time, you will not hear silence. You will hear continuity, the same song you have been learning all your life, now played in full glory. You will rise into it as easily as breath. You will recognize its melody because you've been practicing it in every act of kindness, every word of truth, every choice for light. Death will not end your song. It will amplify it. So until that day, guard your ears, guard your heart, guard your rhythm. Do not take the songs of this world lightly, for they are not just entertainment, they are invitations. Choose carefully which ones you answer. Let your heart be the stage for heaven's music. Let your voice carry the sound of peace into a restless world. And when others ask what changed, you will tell them, I stopped listening to the songs that pulled me away and started singing the one that brought me home.